Hello, I'm Simon. Welcome to my talk. Let's see if this all hangs together. If I'm ever too quiet or you can't see anything because it's too small on the screen, please let me know. Hi, right, so this is Bootstrapping, a startup with SailsJS. There's the sales logo in the bottom left there. Who am I and why should you care what I think? So I'm Simon, technical co-founder of Fookgo. I did a physics degree, worked in the games industry very briefly. Worked in the Microsoft ERP ecosystem for a number of years. Worked at another marketplace startup, and for the last 18 months, I've been technical co-founder of Fookgo.com. Worked with some other MVC frameworks, so ASP.MVC from like 5 years ago, so it's probably not super relevant. Ruby on Rails for some personal projects, about a year of bad Laravel, and of course the last 18 months with SailsJS. So, what is Fookgo, you may ask? It's like Uber for man and van, pretty much. If you need a man van, we can find one. We can be anywhere in the UK in under 1 hour. We can book through the app like Uber. It's built on React Native, which is interesting. Available on the App Store, Play Store. You can book through Fookgo.com, which is built on React.js, which is another interesting topic. And we do business career jobs as well. We're not hiring at the moment, so that's the... So don't worry, this isn't an extended pitch. So let's just skip over this because I timed myself earlier, and this stuff. Let's just assume I was aware of my options and made good decisions. So what it promises, what does SailsJS claim to do? It provides you with an ORM, which is great. Generators for boilerplate and everything, templating for getting your HTML files out, provides sessions and security out of the box, testability, modularity, comes with a console, logging, scripts, excellent. Roots, so APIs need roots, right? So what have we got here? Roots files, pretty obvious fashion. I'll show you a roots file. There it is, there, look. Look, that's your method, that's your URL, that's your action or controller or what have you. If you've got CSRF going on, you can do that. If you've got some CORS stuff, yeah, you've got your cross-origin request stuff going on there, and that's that's a roots file. Pretty straightforward. Also, it does blueprint roots if you go in for that sort of thing. I'm personally not, because I'm mainly using it as an API, but if you're doing the MVC stuff and you want to get your GET requests to automatically generate the route, you can do that. But I've turned that off in this config thing here. So Sales, just a little bit of structure. It'll have a config file, and you can set all the config for all the things in JavaScript objects. And you've got all these different files, what have you. And then you can override them for your particular environment. So Blueprints is one of them. I'm not going to go through all of those things. But this is what we do in a production environment, where you can pull in all your process M's from wherever they're coming in from and put them into sales objects, which will be made globally available to you throughout. So yeah, so for example, if we want our bit.ly access token to pull in somewhere else, it's sales.config.bit.ly access token. That's a global net that becomes available to you. Yeah, so policy files. So you've got your roots there, and Sales also splits things out into policy files separate. So things like admin only, don't clog up the roots files. So you can define your policies in something like that. So reservation payment action, you want it to do its DDoS check, force HTTPS maybe, and then one use only tokens. You don't want the network doubling up on the calls to that and charging someone twice, which never happened. Right. And yeah, so policy file looks something like that, and it's very much like middleware, which you can specify for specific routes. So you'll get your rec, your res, your next, you'll do some logic. It'll either be okay or not. You can modify the streams and then return next, and it should be very familiar to you. Yeah, so I was able to reduce the number of options pre-flight check calls from our site due to cross-site scripting issues caused from hosting our API on a separate subdomain. And the documentation said this option was configurable in the config, but I was actually only able to solve it by creating a custom middleware. So I'll flip that up there. So yeah, you can, in the config, you can do, so you've got your custom middleware. SailsJS comes with like a bunch of stuff pre-rolled so that it works out of the box. But then you can add your own stuff to it. So if I want to do pre-flight caching, then that I found was the best way to do it, because I always wanted to do that on those routes. Super. Okay, so when you're getting started, there's a local text file database to work from, which is nice, so you can just get going without having to configure any of your rest of your development environment. And you can configure sessions to connect to the Redis server in config options. So this is just a little bit of a architecture diagram. So this is our horizontally scalable app here, which is where Sales sits, and you can run sessions through Redis, which is lovely, and you can do everything else through another database. And this is pretty much all it took to set up the sessions. So you do that. You also can Sales uses the Sales framework, puts the session onto each request if it's available, and so you can set things like this: rec.session. The value you want to pull out equals my value from before, and then you can access it somewhere else where you'd be like my new value equals rec.session.value. So it uses JavaScript getters and setters to mask the implementation of that. Does anyone have any strong opinions on JavaScript getters and setters? Does it not look a bit weird to you? Get tripped up a little bit by it? No? Maybe I do. I don't like it sometimes. So Sales has model files, the M in MVC, and this is where the model info is stored. So I'll just show you what a model file looks like. You lucky devils here. So here's a model file, our delivery. So this is the main meat of it. We've got exports, got the attributes. So the item references and cross-references another model, the item. Transporter references another model, the user. Pickup, which is a date time, and status, which is one of these enums here. Super. So in Sales, the data stores for each model are abstracted and configurable. And if you wanted to, you could have one set of models connecting to one data store and another set of models connecting to another data store. But in practice, I just use Postgres because it's a normal data store for normal people. But you can imagine having something off here to a NoSQL database for some certain set if it met your use cases. But in practice, I don't do that. When developing, I set the database to drop and repopulate from a bootstrapped file. So every time I start the server or raise the sails, I'm starting from a known set of conditions, which makes it easy not to trip yourself up on. One of the things that Waterline, the ORM, is actually pretty bad at is if you've got a bunch of models which have cross-references and you get some sort of like level of depth going on there, you get some nesting. So if my item has a root and my root has a location, my location has data on it, I can't start with item and go populate root, populate start location, then access that postcode, for example. You have to write a data store specific query to do that. At most, I could get item.root populated, and I could get start location, but I'd only get its public key. And this is a little excerpt from a database where the root is, and also Sales doesn't well, in the Postgres adapter at least, it doesn't append the .id. So you can see here we've just got a string of numbers. So distance is 2.1, duration is 11, those are just numbers, right? Pickup location is 384, is that just a number, or is that a foreign key? There's no dash ID, underscore ID, and I know they are, but on inspection, it's maybe a bit confusing if you're coming to it, so you kind of have to know what's going on. Yeah, and also if on the server you populate the object, you get the whole object, but you don't, if you don't get the foreign key, so you want to update the object, but you have to keep track of this and know the difference. So for example here, I've called item and I've populated quote. So if I want to update the quote, I know that the item has populated the quote, and therefore I don't want .quote, which will be an object, I want .quote.id. But if I haven't done that and I've just got an item, the quote will be the number that I want to update. So it's just a bit of it's a bit untidy like that, and you've got to keep track of it. Yeah, and in Sales you have to make model level calls like that. So you see how it's quote.update, and I'm not updating an instance of the object, which is unlike Laravel. I like doing that in Laravel. That was good. And you can also do update attribute in Ruby or whatever. So it's a little under-tooled there, I'd say. And if there was one thing I was going to start again or start to clear down some technical debt, it would be to find a way to use Sequelize instead of Waterline. And there is a sales hook called Sales Hook Sequelize, which lets you do this. But Waterline does let you get started off the bat. Yeah, so migrations in Waterline. In theory, there is a way to auto-migrate when sales raises, and it will migrate the changes since last time over. But in practice, it's only reliable from a clean database and not deterministic enough for production projects. In practice, migrations are manual, and funnily, for the first year, I told myself I was going to sort this problem out properly with Connects or something, but I never did. And during that period of self-delusion, I kept all my manual migrations in a page in my notes, not even checked in. But I eventually fessed up to myself and created the migrations folder, which looks something like that, and you go in there and there's a SQL up command and standard stuff. And if you want to do something a bit more involved in there are scripts that can run in the sales environment. And I've used these to do migrations before that involved some logic rather than just create a new table or what have you. Write them, test them, use them once. And I've also got my my cron jobs in there, which run every 10 minutes or once a day or what have you. Yeah, so Sales does not come preloaded with migration assistance, and they recommend that you use open source solutions to your particular data store. But you can start a whole project with the command line using their CLI generator, so you do get started straight away. So Sales new test project, and it'll take you through 1 or 2 questions, and you'll have a whole test project, which works, which is great. And you can structure extra subfolders any way you like, but certain folders do certain things. Sales uses Grunt. It doesn't use Grunt to do this task. It does it in memory. That was an edit. And interpret files in specific locations as part of the framework. And the ones I use most often are actions, helpers, and models. And Sales used to have this idea of a service. So if you use Cloudinary, for example, you can stick all your Cloudinary functions in this service. But services got replaced in the upgrade to version 1. With helpers, and you can just arrange your files so they do certain things. So I'll show you the helpers ideals. Oh, that's gone one way. Yeah. So this should have appeared in the helpers file. Yeah, so you can see helpers, ideal postcodes. For when we use ideal postcodes, you can get autocomplete, and then you further drill down into details. So it just makes that available like this. So go sales helpers, ideal postcodes, .details, and that's available globally to do that. And because you're all so lucky, you can see how easy it is to just test, yes. There we go. Yay, now you've got another function. Woo. We're all excited by that. Yeah, so actions. So some machine pack, they've got this idea of machines, and that's just a fancy way of essentially saying they've got this way of type checking stuff as it comes in. So this should be an action. Yeah, so reservation create, the reservation create action, got your pickup time, and you can put like these little checks on here, and your enum checks. And is it an email, which is nice, just that that's there. Yeah, was that an email that came in? Otherwise, don't let it come in. Security. So I'm just going to zip through some OWASP top 10 stuff which I found relevant. Because Sales runs on Node, you can use any off-the-shelf reverse proxy, DDoS protection, and WAFs and stuff. So there's that. No preclusions there. Our front-end project is separate, so there isn't really an opportunity for script injection, which is good. But you've got EJS, so just use the interpreted input as opposed to the literal one. You can avoid a lot of problems. Sessions can be set to timeout, which is good. It comes with CSRF support out of the box. SQL injection. Now, I'd say that because you're kind of more prone to writing larger queries, if I just hop back to delivery here, because you have got that nesting problem, you're prone to writing stuff like this to actually get the information you need. You are more prone to SQL injection, but so obviously you've got to rely upon your own internal discipline not to allow that not to occur, but you can sort of sanity check the inputs as they come in there, which is good. I'm going to skip over this because what it is me showing you how frustrating it is to use the console, which it claims to come with, and it does come with it, that's for sure. But if you want to use it for anything, or actually, you know what? Because you're all super duper. I'll leave that over. I'll show you what I was going to punch into it. And it becomes quite absurd. So you start off with like, oh, I want to actually, let's say, find some of my delivery items. No, you can't do that. So you end up with this free line thing where deliveries are it's predefined object, and then you do this in the callback, and then you can actually inspect them. But what if you want to test a helper function? Then you do that, and then that doesn't work, and you try await, and then that doesn't work, and then you end up with some iffy stop. Yeah, so it becomes quite frustrating and not super straightforward to. Doesn't lend to a good development experience, but there is more than one way to test new code. So let's talk about unit and integration tests. Now, you can use the standard preferred set of unit testing libraries available to test individual functions, like helpers and stuff. And if we hop along here, so some of these unit tests are more than a year old, so and have not been maintained very well, but do in fact work. So just to prove to you, they do work. You may have observant. You may have noticed that it's a describe only there. Yeah, it all turns green. Isn't that wonderful? So it does work. So you can stick your shoulds and your sign-ons and predefined user setups, and you can pull in API controller admin assign driver. So that corresponds to an action that you can call that in. You've got this idea of machine, which turns that function into what Sales calls a machine. You get all that type checking and validation going on beforehand, and then you can run all your sort of unit tests like that. I'm not going to get bogged down in those details. But unit tests are kind of become a bit trivial, and what you're really interested in is end-to-end tests, and for the life of me, I could not get these to compile this morning. So you just have to trust me that these, once upon a time, did work. But what you can do is you can create an in-memory version of Sales, which has a in-memory version, in-memory database, so it's not hitting the disk every time or whatever. And you can abstract all that stuff away, and you can pull in the app and run things with Supertest Agent and all of that. So you can be reasonably satisfied that when it's run from an actual user agent, it will go through all the way from the start to the back and out again. The one thing I did notice is that if you will have to keep that in-memory database sort of like up the whole time. So if you write a bunch of tests for, I know, deliveries, and then you test a bunch of delivery stuff elsewhere, it will sort of inherit the stuff which happened previously. But you can do that, and I was actually quite chuffed to find it lived up to this promise. And if you had the internal discipline, you could do this for your entire project. Right. So that's the meatiest stuff, and I'll start wrapping up now. So Webpack. So let's not got too many details, but you can use a hook to get Webpack running, and have it hot reload and all of that running from Sales, and that's really was quite painless. Support. What it's like to support. I've always been able to find an answer to my questions. You know what it's like when you're like, oh, I want to use this, but am I going to get left in the lurch in 3 months' time? And that hasn't happened to me, which is good. I've always been able to find good blogs, posts, /tutorials when I've wanted to do something a bit interesting, and they claim to have professional support. I've never had to use this, so I can't vouch for it, but the support has not been atrocious. Reflections. So has it got me moving quickly? Yes. Can I operate securely? Yes. And if I can't, let me know, right? Have I had a major catastrophe yet? Not really. Have I hit a massive blocker where I just couldn't do the thing I wanted to do? No, that's not happened. Is using ORM causing technical debt to accumulate? Yes, it is. Is my code base still open to expansion into microservices? Yeah, it is. So if this becomes, if I want to start having finer-grained control over certain areas, then I can still do that. And would Kifko be in a better place if we'd use another framework? And I mean, it's kind of hard to show that. It's kind of hard to prove a negative, but I can't really see how there's anything much more I'd want to get done that I haven't been able to get done by using Sales. So should you use it? That's a question. So with bigger teams, that's larger projects, you're still probably going to want to roll your own solution, not accept the Sales defaults and their default opinions, build from Express up and do all of that. And then there's as an individual developer, however, who wants to bash out a prototype in the weekend and that they may want to host later on, it has that option open to it fairly straightforwardly, then yeah, I can heartily recommend it. If you've got an idea you want to try, why not? Why not? So in absolute closing, not hiring, but if you want to chat, that's super great. Always raising money, so if investing in on-demand logistics revs your engine, you know who to talk to. Yeah, check out our website. Our reviews are real and pretty good. If only people believed online reviews, but it's looking positive. And if you want to help us at Kifko, and me personally, for being so entertaining, tell a friend or give us a link in your blog or something, and feel free to check that out. Yeah? Great, thank you all. Thank you very much.